Now we move from Baku, from Azerbaijan, and from this interesting Caspian region. We move back to India for a minute because we now have the chance to connect with Bologna, with Italy, with Professor Romano Prodi, former president of the Council in Italy, former president of the European Commission. I'm just checking for the connection. Let's see if Mr. Prodi can hear us in the meantime. We can see you. Good morning, Professor. I think you could only hear part of this special session on the first day of the 15th edition of the Verona Forum. We've already talked about many relevant aspects and serious, important issues as well. We've talked about an economic development process that is changing shape. We might have to leave behind forever globalization as we knew it. Mr. Costin talked about this. And we are witnessing unstoppable processes such as the progressive use of alternative currencies to the classic reference currencies that we previously used, namely dollar and euros. We are seeing different power poles of economic, demographic power that don't just look at the Euro-Atlantic pole, and especially because of the dynamic economic development, they're looking at the East. We heard about alliances between countries that seemed to be competing in the past, which, however, today are joining forces to become protagonists of their own stories, where they can be main actors. You are an economist, a politician, a visionary of geopolitics. So here's my question for you. After this traumatic breakdown, how do you envisage the development of international relations? And most importantly, how do you envisage a different world, a world with possibly different and many poles? Well, first of all, I am very happy to be here. We spent many years together with Intesa. We saw real progress in our relations. I'm sorry I cannot be here in Baku with you, but I am very happy that the relation continues. I know that the city of Baku is even more beautiful than it was, and I hope that we will have the chance to come back together very soon. Now, we are at a very difficult time in history. As you mentioned, globalization is suffering, but it has been suffering from different perspectives. There's tensions between the US and China. First we had COVID, and then, as I said, the growing tension between the US and China. And now we have this terrible tension in Ukraine. So absolutely, we must protect ourselves somehow from these events. We must do everything we can to go back to a situation where we could objectively hope to build cooperations, relations that could last. I think that the first goal, the first desire that we should share is the goal of peace. As soon as possible and as satisfactorily as possible. We are hurting each other. We are hurting ourselves. It is not possible to continue in this way. We have as I said, with the COVID and then with the trade tensions and then with the war, and well, all these events have become obstacles in our relations. And I think that now peace is the first priority that we should aim for. To do what then, though? To do what? And this is what truly matters. We had invested a lot in our economic relations with new infrastructures, in roads and railways, but also in terms of communication infrastructures. We had invested in order to build a relation based on cooperation while respecting our diversities. The Eurasian space has always been characterized by this cooperation, the Silk Road on the one hand, and a more traditional cooperation on the other, Russia with European countries. This now seems like something that belongs to the past. But I think that we need to rethink what's happened and what needs to happen in the future. I remember previous forums, previous meetings, and on those occasions, our goal was to work together in Africa, because this pain-ridden continent needs strong cooperation. The relation with Africa now has become more and more difficult. But I mean, Europe, Asia, and Africa are complementary. They complement each other. We heard it before. We heard that India is also calling for the complementary relation so that we can be in a win-win situation. We need to rebuild a dialogue that must be, of course, based on justice, on mutual respect for people and for the law. Still respecting our diversities. Human rights are essential, but of course each system has its own point of view and its own approach in interpreting the world. So I think that nobody wants to convert anyone else to our own vision of the world, but we all have the chance and the duty to find ways to coexist, to live together despite our diversities. This is what we must keep in mind at all costs. This forum has always been a seminal event. Today it's become more and more difficult to contribute to our common goals, but I hope we can have a joint common future, because the future is much more important than the present. This is the message I would like to share with all of you. The future is much, much more important than the present. Thank you all, and thank you. I hope that the next meetings can take place in a climate of greater cooperation and of more intense participation and integration of our economic activities. Thank you very much for your patience, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you.
Dalla sala di Baku.
Thank you